BlizzCon time. What have you got for us this time? They got Phil. This is surreal LMAO. Take a shot every time they say friends. Don't. Heroes of the Storm snubbed OOF. Friends. The emotional Overwatch music sure does get a lot of mileage, doesn't it? Kinda feels like the weakest open of their current known properties, lol. OYOU didn't leak anything, but Nintendo might have. I like the new hero, lol. Ah yes, the unique style of Overwatch. Not Disney, never Disney. Eldritch horror, Egyptian mythology, witchcraft and heroes as villains or vice versa. F off, that's so appealing. Diablo, F yeah Rod nice tat. And Diablo Immortal made us lots of money. Hey, just in case you didn't hear, we finally addressed the leveling grind PLZ comeback. Late 2024 is a little later than I expected, but well, I don't have a tweet for this one. But then Warcraft showed up. Hey, remember when we were relevant? Sorry, that was mean. Ooh, big talk. I effing love John Height, lol. I don't think I'm ready for Hearthstone to be 10 years old. Asterisk polite clapping asterisk. Well, I can't let Reese do battleground duos with some rando now, can I? That Warcraft Rumble trailer was adorable LMAO WTF. Is Holly Longdale doing the Yoshi P thing, or is she just effing cool? Cataclysm #changes. Spicy classic. This is so experimental, I absolutely love it. Holy smokes, it's Chris Metzen. Chris Metzen really played through the expansions. He had no hand in and went yeah. But what if we made those stories good though? We're the MCU now #World Salsaga. Christopher Metzen, Spider Pride, 8. Christopher Metzen, Midnight sounds so good. Christopher Metzen, sorry, WTF, the last Titan Christopher Metzen. I underestimated the impact of one Christopher Metzen.
Okay, that's enough of that. Hi, shocker, sorry, this is what I really sound like if you are new to the channel. I don't think AI is going to be taking my job anytime soon. If you're wondering, that's literally just some free AI I found on a website called Murph. So there you go. Ethical quandary solved, maybe, I don't know. So, the point of that is I wasn't gonna do a video, so it was mostly tweet reactions. BlizzCon happened, it's still happening. As I'm recording this, we're approaching the What's Next panel for World of Warcraft Classic, but I thought I would get my thoughts in while they're as fresh as possible. If you've missed the last few years of this channel and me talking about World of Warcraft, you may know that I have drifted away from the game. Quick history, I mostly started playing the game in Mists of Pandaria and didn't really stop apart from breaks until Dragonflight. And you might be like, Dragonflight? So you played Shadowlands and you quit in Dragonflight? Yes, I know. Dragonflight gave me something of a geek's existential crisis because I could tell it's a decent expansion, it's fun, it's got all the themes I like, it's got dragons, it's got fun new systems, it addresses a lot of the problems the game had up until now, and it bored the fucking pants off me. I'm allowed to swear, the AI lady was not. I intend to go back and give it a bit more of a try after this, but yeah, basically, for the first time since I really picked up WoW, I was not excited for BlizzCon, I was not excited for the expansion reveal, I almost didn't even tune in, but for the last day or so I've been going, you know what, fine, I'm excited for BlizzCon, let's have a look then. I'm glad I did! As you can probably tell from the storm of tweets I just made you sit through, one Christopher Metzen took me by surprise. I know he had returned to WoW. I know that his role in WoW was then revealed to be bigger than any of us had anticipated, but there was a leak, a very convincing looking leak, like the most convincing looking leak I've ever seen, for an expansion based around Avaloran. Avaloran is this place that's kind of apparently been built up in recent Dragonflight lore as this place beyond the western storms, and it's this new continent full of like storm dwarves and stuff, and that's where Khazalgar was rumoured to be as well, and someone created a very convincing mock-up of these 4 shots from, like, you know, the usual World of Warcraft, like, oh, here's where we're going next trailer, and it would show you, like, new zone here, and I remember I was watching Taliesin and Evertel's stream where they were going over, like, well, it was Taliesin, but he was going over why he didn't believe in the leak, and I was sat there like, come on man, it's so obviously real. And he said it looked boring, and I thought, I would play this. but at the same time I didn't think it looked particularly thrilling, and honestly the reason I'm talking about it now is because that's what I want to get at. Until today, for the last year or two, I've been thinking, you know, maybe World of Warcraft really does have its time for every individual player. I started in Mists, so maybe the burnout that occurred for me here in Dragonflight is similar to the burnout that occurred for someone in like Warlords of Draenor if they started at the very beginning. I was just tuning in for curiosity's sake, like I'll keep half an eye on WoW, I will see where the story is going, I will see what's going on, and I'm kind of curious about what the next expansion is, and if it looks half interesting, I might give it a shot. Well, we didn't get the next expansion, we got the next 3, and I don't know how much hype that I'm feeling necessarily just comes from proximity to the Chris Metzen presentation that he just gave, but I think that's going to go down in history as potentially the most hype presentation ever. I mean, having joined WoW in Mists, most of the BlizzCons I've watched have come post Chris Metzen, or at least post Chris Metzen at his height. So maybe he's hyped up previous expansions in the past this well, but it really feels like we are entering a new age of World of Warcraft where they are shaking up the very foundations of the game. At least that's the pitch they're selling us, right? And they're not the first people to do this. Bungie also revealed 3 expansions at once upon a time, and that's kind of interesting to think about now because Bungie very recently have been in the news for pissing off the entirety of their player base for a myriad of reasons, and honestly it looks like Destiny 2 is in a steeper decline than it has ever been before, but that's irrelevant. When Chris Metzen revealed, or Chris Metzen as the AI lady called him, when he revealed that he was going to announce 3 expansions, obviously 80% of me was going, ooh, but the other 20% of me was going, do I want that though? Because it's exciting to hear about the next expansion, and while it might be hyped to reveal 3 at once, later down the line am I going to find myself thinking, now we're going to hear more about Midnight. We already know that Midnight is a thing, and obviously there'll still be enticing speculation going on about like how do these story threads which we're exploring with the War Within going to shape Midnight, and how does Midnight lead into the Last Titan and all of that stuff. But there's not going to be any big logo reveal, you know, all the leaks 2 years from now, or 1 year from now, who knows what they're doing. They mentioned they were going to try and get expansions out faster, but they've said that before. Are those leaks just going to be all based around Midnight? I have the inside scoop on what Midnight's going to look like. It's going to be a slightly less interesting leak season, but you know, maybe that's a small price to pay. But honestly, I think this was necessary because much like how BBC have clearly asked Russell T Davies to come back and bring back David Tennant and do 3 specials with David Tennant and announce all these, you know, fan servicey things to revive Doctor Who after it's been in a very tough spot. I think there is a very similar thing happening with World of Warcraft and Chris Metzen. I think there is some guidebook to selling a franchise somewhere that mentions the idea of, if your franchise is failing, go back to what made it great and sell that hard. And not always in a nostalgic capacity, but sometimes. But it's interesting to witness the franchiseification, that's not a word, but I've decided it should be, of brands like Star Trek and Doctor Who, because it feels like that's what's happening here in a weird way. Like, obviously it's a different medium, it's a video game, so you can't quite directly compare it in that way, but it very much feels like, you know, he's trying to do like the MCU thing of like, you know, this is this era, this is this, what did he call it? The
World Salsaga.
The World Salsaga, that's the one. It's definitely the most hype presentation in BlizzCon I've ever sat through. And I am all in, which is something I absolutely did not expect. That is the main thing I want to get across in this video. I went in with the lowest expectations I've had for World of Warcraft since I began playing. I did not think I would be moved beyond maybe being like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll give it a try when it came out. And instead, I am as excited for World of Warcraft as I have been since Legion. That being said, there is still a part of my brain which holds itself in reserve going, but they are making a lot of hefty promises, and we are going to see how they are delivered upon. Especially with this faster cycle for a World of Warcraft expansion, I personally am speculating that they are going to lop off the 0.2 patch, and they're just going to have like a 0.05 patch for narrative and like an extra dungeon or whatever, and then like a 1.0 patch being the size of a 2.0 patch in terms of like a new zone, and then one more 0.5 patch and then into the next expansion, which will be a year or year and a half instead of 2 or 2.5 years. I have my reservations about that if they can pull it off, and what that's going to mean for the game in the long run, and if expansions are going to feel smaller in general. But Chris Metzen clearly wants to solve one of WoW's oldest problems, which is the between expansion stretch of nothingness. Usually, if you're not aware, I don't know why you'd be listening to this video if you're not very aware of World of Warcraft, but usually after the final patch of the expansion, anywhere between 6 months to a year is how long it takes, usually without content, for the next expansion to come out. Sometimes longer. Anyway, should we talk about the actual bloody expansion then? The thing, having seen the World of Warcraft What's Next panel and the information contained inside, the thing that stands out the most to me about the new expansion is that it is a vertical continent. For those of you who have not seen it, the first zone is the island at the top, then the next zone is the zone beneath, and the next zone is the zone beneath, and the next zone is the zone beneath, and only the one at the very bottom looks dark or like something you would expect to find underground, and I am floored at the fact that they have managed to get away with that. We literally have an underground expansion, and it doesn't look like it's gonna look dark and dingy and glum and gloomy and boring. We've got an allied race and neutral allied race in the Irvin, which is interesting. I personally think that oh god, I've been away from WoW too long, what the hell are they called? The Dark Iron dwarves I still think look like the best variant of dwarf, but it's interesting to me that the Horde will now have access to dwarves. I think it's maybe a little lackluster in terms of the race/class department, that we're only getting one new race and it's an allied race, which I'm starting to see as the more like a race that's we've already got a model for, and that's not going to receive maybe the same breadth of customizations as something like the Drakfir. Hopefully, with it being the only new race option in the game, they will pump a lot of effort into there being like more customization than the Nightborn had, for example. But yeah, I love alts and I love reasons to make new characters, and so I was a little, like, I mean, I'm only just thinking about it now, to be fair, there's so much else to be thinking about, but I'm a little like, I do look forward to, like, in BFA we had multiple allied races, that kind of thing. Speaking of alts though, they're doing this new thing called warbands, and I'm still not entirely certain on the specifics of it, but it seems very much like it's going to be the excuse for, account-wide reputations and that kind of thing, which is very exciting. It kind of looked like you might be able to do something a la the Star Wars The Old Republic system in terms of like having a cast of characters which share a bunch of unlocks and stuff. If you've ever played that game, they have a really cool alt progression system. The key art for it is a bunch of alts hanging around a fire, and I'm just thinking, like, combine that with the companion system, dude. Like, the fact that the fact that Bran can be your companion in these new delves, which I've not yet spoken about, is really exciting. But what if you put that AI into alternate player-made characters, and you could run an entire party of your own characters through a dungeon and get gear for all of them at a single time? Now that is an MMO system that, to the best of my knowledge, has never been done, and it feels like those two systems are just sitting side by side, and if you could just combine them, that would be so cool. Honestly, it's called the Warband system. I kind of feel like maybe the original intention was for that to be the case, and maybe it still will be, I don't really know. Anyway, delves are supposed to be this new 1 to 5 player scaling, slightly more casual. I'm getting the vibe of like outdoor content, not quite a dungeon, but there's like going to be like 13 of them, and this is basically the Mists of Pandaria thing, isn't it? But we're not calling it that anymore. Scenarios! They were called scenarios, I think. But they seem to be taking it a bit more seriously this time. They seem to have identified a portion of a player base who don't like to do too much raiding or dungeon group stuff, and instead want to get the bulk of their endgame experience through what they call outdoor content, and they're also like making a portion of the a portion of the Great Vault, which is the weekly big loot thing you do, They're making a portion of that outdoors focused, which I like a lot, because it's me. Hello, spoiler, it's me. I'm outdoor content player, and it seems like they seem to be lumping the delves in with the outdoor content kind of a player base, so it'll be interesting to see how that all manifests eventually. You know, I'm very much toying with the idea of having a new main for this expansion, because, I mean, if it wasn't already obvious, I will be returning to WoW for this, and maybe beforehand as well. But I have only ever mained my Balance Druid, and I think one of the things I struggled with in Dragonflight in terms of burnout is that I don't think Balance Druid is the class I enjoy playing the most. I think Fury Warrior might be the class I enjoy playing the most, so I think with all of this fully account-wide stuff that we're now heading into, I might just start maining a Fury Warrior. Bonus points if you let me make a Drak Fear Warrior. Please, pretty please, pretty please with a cherry on the top. Actually, if I was a Drak Fear, I might go Arms. Anyway, they kind of buried the lead with the hero talent system, because it's kind of this weird tertiary talents thing where they showed this picture which is like a triangle of the specs, and kind of like two of the specs could access one of the hero talents, so I think they had Guardian Warrior and Fury Warrior can both access what they called the Mountain Fane hero talent set, which is fucking awesome. It's like this sub-spec feature. It's cool, but they buried the lead because of the they did mention like having a Dark Ranger one. It's basically spell customizations, which is what we've all wanted. Unfortunately, it's tied into like actual also spells and like power and stuff, so if you just want to have a Dark Ranger, and then maybe it's not the best thing to choose for your hunter hero talent wise, even though you have the customizations of a Dark Ranger, maybe it won't work out quite in your favor. But for players like me who care more about the fantasy of the class than the actual DPS output of the class, I think that's going to land pretty damn well. And yeah, just the story, it seems like Chris Metzen has played the expansions that he had no hand in, as I mentioned in that one tweet, and has gone like, this is my favourite thing about this, right? He hasn't gone, okay, well, forget the stuff that didn't work. He's going, we're going to take the stuff that didn't work, and we're going to make it relevant, and we're going to make it cool. Anduin has PTSD, let's work with that and see if we can make that a cool fucking thing going into, like, no one particularly wants to remember Shadowland's story as, like, an important thing, but we're going to make it relevant in a way that is actually cool for the new narrative going forwards. And he's kind of done a similar thing with, I guess, the sword that everyone's been making fun of. You know, he said about Magni, and he was like, did the BFA stuff ever really get resolved? Which is what we've all been saying this entire time. And he's like, let's go back and let's address it and let's make it relevant and let's make it part of a plotline going forwards. And I cannot fucking wait to see where this goes. Honestly, it kind of sounds like they're setting up WoW 2 after these next 3 expansions. I don't know how I feel about that, and I don't know that that's necessarily true, but go back and listen to some of Chris Metzen's language, and he said something about this story setting up the next decades of Warcraft or something, and it's like, if this story is setting up what's to come, this story seems like a big thing in and of itself, but I'll have to go back and double check that, because I may have misconstrued that, but I don't know, I don't think WoW 2 is off the table at this point. Certainly if not WoW 2, then like the idea of fucking up Azeroth permanently. I think WoW Classic has really given them license to experiment with the world and change it up. Obviously they already did this with Cataclysm, but they got such a response to that being altered forever and how that made people feel, that I think that for a long time they strayed away from any kind of permanent alteration to the world. But with the storylines that we've been teased, like the fact that in Midnight, the second expansion of this trio, we're going to be travelling back in time and helping out the disparate elf tribes, and then in the fucking in the third expansion it's going to be called The Last Titan, and things are pretty fucked up, and I don't know, just the language about it makes me think that Azeroth is fundamentally changing in some way. I mean, we're dealing with Azeroth as the World Soul. This is the World Soul saga. So maybe Azeroth awakens and there's no more planet or whatever, and then we have to deal with like a new world that we've all been moved to or some shit afterwards. The speculation videos are going to run absolutely rampant after today, or yesterday. I'm not sure when I'm going to be scheduling this video for. Anyway, I also want to talk a little bit about WoW Classic, because WoW Classic didn't receive quite the same positive reception to the WoW retail stuff, and I'm slightly flummoxed as to why. You'll have to forgive me, I'm not a WoW. I nearly said a hardcore Classic player, but that's actually a thing as well. I'm not a super zoned in Classic player. I like to visit Classic every so often and to attempt V-leveling process, and obviously I get rebuffed a little bit every time because of how long and arduous it can be, but that's fun. But it's a kind of fun that I don't usually see through to the end. And like I've said already, I'm not really a raider. I don't love looking for groups in chat or trying to join a guild and socialize with people to join a raid group, to have that commitment every week. My attention span doesn't work that way. But yeah, from my point of view, what the WoW Classic community wanted was WoW Classic Plus, and what the WoW Classic community got was WoW Classic Plus, but just called Season of Discovery. And what the WoW Classic community responded with was, fuck you, we wanted WoW Classic Plus, to which I went, huh? Now, also to be fair, this was reception before the WoW Classic What's Next panel, which at the time of recording I have now seen. A little peek behind the curtain, somewhere in this video there was a gap between me talking and me going away and watching a panel and me coming back and continuing to talk. If you can find it, I'll give you an internet cookie. Anyway, pretty much from the announcement I saw it as WoW Classic Plus, because what they're doing is they are injecting new things to discover into WoW Classic in terms of overworld discoverability and new abilities which change up how classes play. Like they've said pretty much everyone can tank and heal at this point, tank or heal when they couldn't before. Like warlocks can be tanks, hunters can be tanks, paladins can be tanks. Brave new world, I'm telling you. And I think most curiously, oh god, my throat. Sorry, I think most curiously, they're turning Black Fathom Deeps into a 10-player raid. Bosses will have proper raid mechanics, they will give out new loot, and it's like capped at level 25 until the next phase when there's going to be a higher level cap and assumedly a new dungeon turned into a raid somewhere down the line. And that's fucking spectacular. That is so experimental. That is honestly fairly brave of them. I foresee that it won't all turn out to be sunshine, lollipops and rainbows. There will probably be issues, but like they can use that to address the next wave of content they make. And it's also such a unique approach to content that I've seen anyway. And crucially, they've also said, to be fair in the panel, that hey, we're not going to stop at level 60. We're also going to look into, using some cut content. They teased Karazhan crypts, and there's like an Emerald Dream Zone that they never used, I believe. There's like Mount Hyjal, isn't there? So at level 60 they could do some endgame content as well, and I can't quite remember if they teased this or if this is just me hoping, but it seems like they also did tease like beyond that, just purely created new content. This is absolutely a soft launch of we are tinkering with an existing old game and trying to keep the old feel and creating new PvE and PvP challenges for you. I haven't mentioned PvP because I don't personally give a shit about PvP, sorry. And there's new loot, and there's new abilities, and there's new progression and metadata. Metadata, what? There's going to be a new meta, and they're not doing a PTR for any of it because they want it to be discovered as it happens, to try and recreate that magical experience of playing WoW for the first time and not knowing anything and not being able to find guides for everything online. I can do nothing but applaud them for this, and I will absolutely be checking it out when it launches on the 30th. Oh my god, that's at the end of this month, good lord. It's bloody brilliant. It's I can't believe there was such a negative response to this. It's so disappointing to see the internet doing the internet thing. I'm guessing some big streamer misconstrued what Classic Plus meant in a live stream reaction, and that then all of their fan base took that up and started harassing devs or whatever. But hey, hopefully now that this What's Next panel has happened, a little bit more of that has been sorted out. Also, that's not all for WoW Classic. They're adding what they're called a self-found mode to WoW Hardcore, which basically means you can't trade with anyone or use the auction house or anything until level 60 in Hardcore mode, meaning it's basically Iron Man mode, or just Iron mode, if you want to call it that. I don't know why they called it self-found mode. It's a really weird, sometimes it feels like when there is a popular fan name for a thing, Blizzard go out of their way to call it something else so it doesn't look like they've taken the idea from the community. And I just wish they'd called it Iron Man mode. What the hell is self-found mode? That is such a weird name for it. That is the only negative opinion I have about it, though. I think that's probably quite a fun little extra challenge for hardcore, isn't it? And of course, they're doing Cataclysm, which is where I come in. No, it's not. Mists of Pandaria is where I come in. But if they are going to keep doing these expansions and eventually slowly catch up to modern WoW, or if they're not catching up, at least match its pace and like have this older version of WoW that's continuing to come out behind, I think that's brilliant. And I think I'm a lot more enamored by the idea of WoW Classic Cataclysm than I am WoW Classic Vanilla, because it's a lot more approachable. And as I've already mentioned, while I do enjoy the Vanilla challenge, I also prefer not spending thousands of hours getting to level 60. And Cataclysm's the one before I really properly started, so I'm curious to see what it's like. So maybe I'll give it a go. Maybe I won't. I'm not quite as like 100% down for it, but maybe I'll give it a go. I think as it gets closer to a modern version of WoW, it is going to feel weird having two different sets of collections, but we'll see how we go. Also, something that I'm sure will come out in the Q&As, I'm concerned that this means the end of RAF servers, and I don't think it should, because I think RAF and Cataclysm are very different games, and if all you have is Season of Discovery Vanilla and Cataclysm Classic, I don't think that serves every type of classic player base. I think you need either BC or RAF in there. Anyway, that's that. Also, Overwatch 2 got a new hero who looks pretty cool, and Diablo 4's expansion is coming a little bit later than I expected, but I don't really know where I set my expectations for that from. I think it was actually a pretty weak BlizzCon outside of WoW, which is really weird to say because WoW has been the weakest part of BlizzCon for a long time now. But also, before we got to the WoW part, I didn't think it was a weak BlizzCon. I was enjoying myself, so I think for the first time in a very long time, World of Warcraft was the pinnacle of BlizzCon, and that's so delightful. Oh, also there's Warcraft Rumble, which had an adorable trailer, and I will actually be checking out on my iPad. I don't foresee myself loving the gameplay, but I do love the art style. And Hearthstone's a thing. Anyway, thank you very much for coming to listen to this random bastard's thoughts on BlizzCon 2023. Let me know what you thought down below if you like. I'll probably reply if you're kind and whatever. And I guess subscribe for more opinions about random things. This isn't really part of any series. I don't know. Like the video if you liked it, and see you in the next BlizzCon. Huh. I kind of believe there will be a next BlizzCon now. I wasn't so sure before. That was a joke.